Hello and welcome to ATARC's webinar series. Today, topic experts will discuss how shifting security left with DevSecOps allows agencies the ability to shorten the development lifecycle while avoiding harmful security incidents. My name is Kirsten Patton, Working Group Program Manager here at ATARC, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel discussion. I would like to welcome all of our attendees and a special thanks to Diane Pearson, Lindsay Stallmaker, and the Invicti and Checkmarks teams. This afternoon, we are going to hear from our panelists, which will be followed by a Q&A where we will pop in a few poll questions and then answer yours. Before we begin, I just want to encourage you to please submit those questions of your own in the Q&A section of this platform, and also remember to answer the poll questions as we go through them in order to ensure that you receive your CPE credits. That being said, if our panelists could please come on camera, we'll go ahead and get started. To kick us off, I'll have each of our panelists please introduce yourself. Who are you? What agency are you with? And anything else that you would like to share with our agents or with our audience up top. This would be the time. Let's start with Edmund, please.
Hey, mic check, please.
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Edna. Currently, I'm a Naval Information Warfare Center Atlantic employee. My primary focus is on leading systems engineering activities with, on the area of the DevSecOps, Agile, cloud infrastructure, coordinating with program of records to make sure that cybersecurity is part of their contractual obligations, as well as their implementation and design phases throughout the entire software development lifecycle. From a policy perspective, supporting OpNav to ensure that the policies in terms of DevSecOps, Agile, cybersecurity, risk management framework, continuous ATO, and what say you are part of the conversations from the beginning stages of the software development lifecycle all the way to the operations and delivery. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Edmund. Let's move over to Ian next.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ian Anderson. I am a lead DevSecOps engineer with Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren at their DMNEC activity. Currently stepped into a new role as the acting technical lead for our new enterprise-wide software factory offering. So taking, kind of taking that leap from looking at a few projects, doing DevOps, DevSecOps for those projects, to now taking a look at the enterprise-wide offerings to the 5,000 employees that work at Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren. So it's a big leap from working with groups that have been within the realm of doing DevOps best practices, a lot of the high-level software development best practices, to now taking a look at over 5,000 employees, where there are many concerns, big projects, small projects. As well as teams that are doing the best practices, and then you have teams that really need a lot of help to do that. So now taking a look at our policies, our tools, and everything that we can offer to our warfare center that's not going to hinder those teams doing the latest and greatest best practices, but also to where we can not leave behind the teams that need a lot of help. And then kind of in the big picture of that, the Navy is kind of getting into the software factory game, and their little outcroppings, at Nywick Pack with Forge up near DC. And, how can we find our balance in between all these software factories to where we can coexist and not, replicate a lot of the things that we want to do.
Thank you, Ian. And then over to David.
Hi, my name is David Spurbeck. I am the DevSecOps architect for Census Bureau at the Enterprise Development Tools Support Branch. That's kind of a mouthful, so we typically shorten that to Enterprise Tools or even eTools. Census is still in its infancy in adopting DevSecOps. The branch I work for, its purpose is to provide enterprise tools to the several hundred different project teams at Census, and also provide those tools in a way that supports DevSecOps. But we still have struggles of things that we're trying to do. More importantly, with things like education, or finding avenues for education of management and project teams, and their ability to adopt our tool suite that's part of our CICD pipeline, software factory, that sort of thing. That just building a field of dreams for that platform as a service is not enough. We have to reach out to those management and teams via different avenues through working groups and other avenues of working directly with teams for the adoption. So over to you.
Super cool. Thank you. Next, let's hear from Rusty.
Hi, thank you. I'm Rusty Sides. I'm with Checkmarks, and I lead our sales engineering team for our public sector customers. Spent the past 4 years at Checkmarks. Prior to that, I was a software security consultant, and spent about the first 10 years of my career as a software developer. So that symbiotic relationship of taking development and applying that towards secure coding has been very much ingrained, and I really like to distribute that message of how secure coding and finding software assurance, looking for vulnerabilities in source code is all part of our messaging. And that really fits in well with what Checkmarks offers our customers in the public sector, because we offer solutions that are related to doing static analysis, finding software vulnerabilities early in the life cycle, shifting left. But yet we also have a full product portfolio that includes interactive testing, also some code bashing type of education where you can go out and train your application security developers to become secure coders through interactive gamification of education type of things. And then we also have software composition analysis, so you can check your open source software and see if there's any vulnerabilities associated with that. And I'm looking forward to having this talk with the panel today. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And then, of course, we need to hear from Ted.
Last but not least, right? Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. So Ted Rutch, I am the federal sales manager here at Invicti. I've spent the last 20 years delivering security solutions to the public sector. And here at Invicti, we're specifically focused on delivering web application security solutions that integrate, automate, and validate the vulnerability management process into the software development lifecycle. Our specific areas, you'll find that we complement Checkmarks very well. We are in the dynamic and interactive application security testing space. And I'm here going to talk about, hopefully convey some information that we're learning from our customers. Obviously, we've seen a massive influx of web-enabled applications, and scanning and testing has become paramount. So in looking at the history of application testing and scanning, it's been a very legacy manual process of validating vulnerabilities, and the AppSec teams have spent the majority of their day really just validating versus fixing and remediating problems quicker. So by focusing on a modern approach to DevSecOps, we're going to hopefully convey what our customers are seeing as well, which is a way to remediate and validate vulnerabilities quicker, accelerate the software release cycles, and of course, keep compliance in there. So I look forward to speaking with everybody today and answering your questions. Thanks.
Great, fantastic introduction. So sticking with the topic of this panel, first and foremost, shifting the security left with DevSecOps, what does that mean to each of you? Or better yet, could you each share a little bit about your experience, your journey so far with doing just that? And we'll just go in the same order. Ian, would love to hear from you.
Yes, so, for myself, when I hear shifting, security left, or really anything with, within the DevOps, DevSecOps purview, shifting it left, people say, well, how far left do things get shifted? And ideally, we would like to shift everything to, the start of the software development lifecycle, as we can. And when it comes to security, it's really enabling our, or giving insight to our developers on, not just what they're doing, writing their own code, but, a lot of open source code is brought in. So giving them the visibility of, you brought this package in, here are the vulnerabilities, and level of vulnerabilities that you are introducing into that. Ideally, some say, yeah, we can check for that as it goes into a build and fail the build and things like that. But I think giving kind of the perspective to the developer of, hey, I want to bring this package in, the version that, current version or version they're trying to pull in has a vulnerability, and to give them the options to say, hey, if you change to this version or you upgrade to this version, you can reduce those vulnerabilities. And then also giving them tools, on the other side of where, whether it's, your security team or a standards team that comes in and sets templates to say, this is how we should be coding for our team, or this is what has been set for the Warfare Center, or adding in, static analysis tools that allow the developers to see, what are some, if they don't have them already, what are some of the best practices that they should be watching out for? And, that's always a big thing, especially when it comes to training, on the security side of, as you have these junior developers coming in, how can you easily train them up without spending, having a senior developer there, spending time with them. And I feel these tools can help them do that as they see, oh, well, the way I'm coding right now doesn't really conform to, the best practices or best standards, and they start to look out for those things. And, that's where I see kind of when they say shift security left, as much as possible to, enable our developers to see those vulnerabilities, see those issues before they actually kick it off into a lot of the pipelines.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And Edmund, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What has your journey shifting left look like at Navy?
Thank you for that. First, I just like to start, as Ian mentioned, right? This is from my personal experience, so I don't want to represent the full capacity of the government with my comments, just for transparency. I'm going to focus on with a recommendation first. The intent is that initially this mantra of DevOps, this philosophy started early in the industry side, and then government kind of caught up with it, and then through this other sec part in the middle of it at the beginning or at the end, call it sec DevOps, DevSecOps, DevOpsSec, whatever it is, right? At the end of the day, our primary focus is that we deliver capabilities securely from the design phase all the way to the operations. In many cases, again, as an example, just recently we deployed a platform as a service solution. I'm not going to name any products per se, right? But just a subset of tools. The challenge that we saw is that as we are deploying these products, a lot of the industry products that are being built from the industry are not truly built with the design as in constrained environments, on a low bandwidth environment, in a disconnected environment. So when we try to deploy a lot of these tools, we face these hurdles with like being FIPS compliant environments, which the tools that are built by the industry, in some cases they follow, the STIG guidelines and the NIST guidelines that are released to the public. But in many cases, we have to work and partner with the industry to kind of help them and guide them through, hey, your application doesn't work on the FIPS compliance infrastructure. Your product requires an ASD SRG, which is your application security guidelines. So a lot of these components, and again, I would like to emphasize that to the to the industry, we're trying to build this partnership. Just as, this item being very important on the government side, that security is fundamentally the basis principle for delivering capability to the mission owners, because from a government perspective, we deal with, I would say, with a more risky proposition in terms of cost of life, right? A lot of the systems that we build, they're mission systems, they're weapon systems, they're our nuclear, software related systems. So we have to be very pragmatic, but on the same time, we need to approach security, throughout the life cycle. And another note I wanted to add, to Ian's point is, in government, we have a lot of constraints in terms of networks. We deal with the cloud access point. On the industry side, comparing, you have a more open nature in terms of development, creating more innovation. Our infrastructure, right? It's the costs, continue to go higher. How do we now take all of these challenges and try to consolidate and come up with a strategy or a training materials for our workforce. So then they don't just look at the industry capability and say, well, look how fast the industry is going with their, their secure designs and accessing their environments. Why can't government do the same thing? So we need to start building that relationship between the government on how government operates and sharing a lot of our pain points with the industry, so then industry can start learning and adjusting to their design model with their shift security left mindset as well. I would hate to see products being developed. There might be the greatest products from the industry being developed. When they come in the government side, the infrastructure, then we have to like re-architect them or redeploy them or redesign them to try and plug some of the challenges that either not by design left out from a security perspective, but they require additional, bolt-on security on top of it to make sure that it's in compliance with the government side. There is a lot going on in my mind. I'm going to try to, pause there for a second, but I'll try more, I'll be more than happy to address certain examples as we go forward. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Great insights. David, over to you.
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting myself. Our approach to shifting left is kind of two vectors. One is the culture side, and one is the tool side. Now, my branch is mainly focused on supplying the tools or the tool suite for the project teams to help them adopt DevOps. But we also try very much to help them understand what it means to shift left. And one of the ways to help do that is to educate them on value stream management, which helps define your as-is process and your to-be and all the bottlenecks that are in the way of delivering that value quickly. And typically, when you find those bottlenecks, you have to shift those left while still maintaining that functionality. So that means involving other groups like Office of Information Security or a testing group or other organizations and put them into the new team or the new squad that is now trying to adopt this DevOps. And that is so far become kind of a little bit of a struggle with us in being able to achieve that with project teams. So we're mainly focusing while the teams are learning and trying to figure out how to adopt is what kind of tools can we provide to help them achieve that through a security platform. So we've invested in a IAST platform that also does SEA or software composition analysis for your open source dependency components. And also it does a runtime application self-protection. So it's more than just static and dynamic analysis that is shifted left. It is like always on security, where the security, the interactive part of the IAST is actually being part of the application and doing analysis of the application through all the different parts of the lifecycle, starting all the way at the beginning where the developer's starting to work on their code all the way through to production. So that's the type of thing that we're working on to try and support the project teams and help them to understand what it means to shift left and still be secure.
Great, thank you so much. And then Rusty and then Ted, what are you guys' experience on the industry side for shifting left with DevSecOps?
Sure. So the best perspective I can give without breaking any confidentiality of any of my customers, but I get a nice view of seeing across the board rather than just one individual agency or one particular organization. I can see different levels of maturity across the board. And Checkmarx is very good about working and being flexible with all of these different levels of maturity. I see some organizations that have absolutely zero security testing. There's not even a manual process in place, that are looking for help to know where to even start. And we can go in and help them and provide them the tools and the expertise necessary to go ahead and start their program And that's probably the beginning of that process of shifting left, because they didn't even have a right to shift from at that point. And then you'll find other organizations are very much in a compliance-driven capacity, to where it's more of a security gate type of sale, in the sense that they're just looking for a tool to meet the needs and make sure that they can check the box and say they've done a security scan to meet a particular compliance. And we urge these types of customers to go beyond that and shift left, in the sense of not only enabling their security team, but enabling their developers, to where as the developers are writing code, they're solving these problems early in the process. And we also want them to be driven based on more than just having a whole bunch of findings that you can say, we found this, but actually go in and build a program there where you remediate those findings. So we have lots and lots of solutions that kind of help that process of going in, remediating it, knowing what to do. If your developers are not trained in what to do to actually fix a particular vulnerability that's discovered, we have remediation advice, as well as just-in-time training that they can take that will help them to understand exactly what the problem is, how to solve the problem, and hopefully avoid making the same security mistakes in the future. But the main goal of shifting security left is, the earlier you find these types of vulnerabilities, the cheaper it is and the less exposure to risk you have of that vulnerability ever making it into a production environment. I thought that Ian and Edmund had really good points when it comes to the challenges that they have, and a lot of those same challenges we've had to encounter and kind of help solve for our customers. There's a lot of compliance. There's a lot of different hardware and network requirements based on what level of infrastructure has been set up at different organizations. And as a public sector lead here at Checkmarx, it's been my mission to be more or less an advocate for the public sector and help the commercial side and the industry side understand that there's not a one size fit all. You really have to understand that there are more rigid hardware requirements. There are much more security controls when you're working with public sector customers. And I urge them to understand the messaging of seeing that if you can make something secure enough for a government agency, I've never heard of a commercial customer say, sorry, that's too secure, we don't want that. So we try to set the bar for our government customers so that it meets the needs of our commercial customers as well. So shifting left is very much a big part of what we do at Checkmarx, and I love working with them. And one last thing before I kind of give my time over to Ted is, I thought David made a really good point when he's talking about culture shift. So enabling the security in an organization to where they're embracing a secure culture, I think that also ties in heavily with AppSec training, making sure everybody gets full buy-in. Developer buy-in is key. And if you make the tools work in an environment that fits in with that developer's workflow, they're used to working with defects, make your security issues right there integrated in the same defect tracking system they're using, to where it's just another defect to them, but it's really a security issue they're solving. And I think you get a lot more developer buy-in with that.
And then over to, sorry.
Well said, Rusty. And I think you'll find a lot of the answers that Rusty was just giving. We seem to complement each other very, very well. And I agree with a lot of the points that Ian and David did convey. But I mean, shifting security left is just that, right? What is the predominant tool that end users are using today, and that's their applications. So being able to get the most secure applications in the hands of the end users with updates and having them be vulnerability free is obviously key. So when building a vulnerability management process into the software development lifecycle, one of the first key elements is actually going out and ensuring your agency has captured all of your web assets to make sure those are being scanned within your processes. Then you want to start automating and integrating them into your existing systems. Whether you're using CICD tools for development or issue tracking systems like a Jira or a Splunk or ServiceNow, you want to be able to allow your end users to continue to develop and remediate problems within those existing environments and not have them learn something new. And then from there, it's all about expediting the updates and security of those applications, right? Making sure they're vulnerability free. And again, as I said earlier, the biggest delay for software release is really the ATO, the AppSec review. And they're spending the majority of their time reviewing vulnerabilities to see if they're actually exploitable or if they're just false positive noise, right? So if there was a way to automate the process of validating vulnerabilities, that would expedite software release cycles, that would significantly cut down on the AppSec team's review and validation of vulnerabilities and let them focus and remediate what really are the problems. And therefore, they can expedite the updates and ensure, obviously, compliance within their environment.
Excellent. Thank you guys for those answers. So we'll take a quick pause here and put up our first poll question for today. And if you're just now tuning in, answer this and you'll get your CPE credit. What are the main hurdles you're experiencing in web application security? And if they're not your laptop, these options include automating security scans, automating workflows through dev tool integrations, ability to scale across applications, reducing time to remediation, or collaboration and communication. So please take a moment to answer that, and then we can post the results up for review. But for the next part of this panel, oh, there's the answers. Okay, let's see. 24% automating security scans, and then everything else not too far behind. Great, thank you for answering that. So shortening the development lifecycle, we're gonna stick here for a bit and discuss what are some of the hurdles, challenges, and if you've experienced this and you have solutions to these hurdles and challenges, maybe this would be a good time to share some of your insights on those. Let's see here. I'm just seeing some audience questions come through. All right, so back to what I was saying before, hurdles, challenges, solutions that you've discovered to overcome when it comes to shortening development lifecycle. Let's start with Edmund, please.
Hey, thank you. I'm a software developer by trade. I do a lot of cloud development, infrastructure as code, platform, Kubernetes. What say you? At least I try to stay up to date with the latest technologies. By any means, I'm not saying I'm an expert in all the areas, just familiar with the concept. In terms of software development and trying to better assess the requirements in terms of what the requirements are, what the expectations are from the customer, how do we reach that end goal? How do you translate those high-level requirements? Again, from a government perspective, you have, A, B, C level requirements, then you go to the C, D, E, F level requirements. And then from there, you break them down to tasks and stories following either an Agile, Scrum / Kanban, methodology. Engaging the software development teams, your Agile teams in terms of your software development, your cybersecurity folks, your quality assurance folks that constitute your full development team. It is imperative that they are fully understood. But in order for them to be understood per the customer's needs, it's not just the need of the product owner being present, but you need that feedback, that cycle, that operational user be part of those discussions. So that's breaking down those requirements at the level that the team can understand them, as well as what's needed from the operational users are met at all levels. It is imperative as well that the culture within the team itself needs to be acceptable. Each individual and member of the team needs to be at the level that it's acceptable of one another's lack of experience or one another's way of how they operate, how they think, having that ability that are across domain experience in terms of if you got a cybersecurity engineer, it would suck for them to just say, well, I'm only going to deal with the cybersecurity aspects of the development of the application. If you got a developer, they're only focused on writing the code, doing some unit testing, integration testing, or functional testing, and then just release it. And at that point, you kind of engage collectively, whatever constitutes that software development team. And then by keeping in mind this shift, security to the left and coupling them together. In the government side, some of the challenges we see is that And we're working hard. We're training our workforce to become more open-minded in terms of, hey, just because you're certified cybersecurity engineer, that doesn't mean that you're solely responsible only for the security aspect or testing of the application at the security level. You also have to learn how to do development and help the developers to better understand and assess on how they can apply their the NIST guidelines, the STIG checklists that they are constantly being utilized via tools like checkmarks and so forth, that enable us to then adhere and apply these changes, these security holes from the beginning. Thus, when the application goes through your CICD pipeline, using your proper tools that your team is more comfortable with, you eliminate a lot of these findings earlier in your development stage versus them reaching that operational perspective, in the field, that can create a high level of risk for the operational users as well as for the product itself, that then can trying to avoid a lot of the security issues, either being hacked, the information being stolen or lost. But I wanted to say one more thing before I hand back to you, is that as we operate, in this 21st century, right? A lot of our workforce and government side, we have a more aging, workforce, right? So it's challenging from a government to have a lot of our, 40 plus, 50 plus, systems engineers to kind of let go a lot of what they've learned in their 20 plus year career and kind of relearn a lot of the new technology stack, Kubernetes, you do Docker, all these other technologies. So we're trying to bridge that gap in terms of having a millennial workforce that we can build these teams to do software development, coupled with our aging workforce, so then we can refresh going forward. So I don't know if I answered your question, specifically, but there are a lot of challenges and we are doing good progress trying to bridge a lot of those gaps. Over to you.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to throw it over to Ian now.
Yes, what Edmund just said is, spot on with, exactly some of the issues you see and some of the things that can, make the software development lifecycle, extend beyond what you want it to be. One of those being the aging workforce. You have, your technical subject matter experts who, probably have started on, building on, whatever it is, system when it, first was created, and they're still around, developing on it, and have the new workforce coming in. Speaking of that, it's funny, you have people coming in right out of college, and recently we just had, award ceremony, and we have somebody within our command who's been working there for 40 years. So, how not only, when it comes to development of, how do you make the two, those two people, one out of college, one who's been working there for most of their career, 40 years, how do you get them to, develop exactly the same, but also, how do you train them? The younger person wants to be very hands-on and probably wants to get in there, test things out. The older person probably, wants some reading material, be shown some examples before they, actually get their hands on something to test it out. And, that's one of the big things that we see. What Edmund said of that knowledge transfer of, how can we get that knowledge that technical subject matter expert has, and transfer that to some of the newer employees. I know for NSWC Dahlgren, one of the complaints that we hear all the time is, we work for the government, so you can't just go out there and type in a Stack Overflow. How do you set this up in this kind of restricted environment? It's just a security issue, something that nobody probably has an answer to. So we're standing up a kind of Stack Overflow like capability for our developers and our community to go in, be able to search through this knowledge base of questions and answers, or even ask their own questions, where it's not you're putting in a ticket to your IT department, waiting for somebody to get back, and then again, it may not be an expert on what your question is, so they might not even have an answer. It allows the people with the knowledge to come to you, and I see that knowledge sharing, kind of being a trainer for people, and to break down those barriers, because if you get frustrated with putting in tickets and waiting for the IT department, eventually you just don't want to try anything new. You're going to go with what you're used to and the processes that you've always done. So getting people the knowledge up front, I think, is where you can start to change the culture, not only for some of the newer people who are coming in and get frustrated with the system that's already in place, but even for those older developers who are seeing all these new buzzwords and all these new pieces of technology and software coming in, to be comfortable using that and collaborating with everybody, not just with their team, but throughout the entire warfare center. I see that kind of knowledge sharing and training goes into the implementation of better processes and better practices to shorten the development lifecycle.
Awesome, thank you. And then David, I was gonna throw the same question out to you, but I know you mentioned the CICD pipeline earlier. So if you want to take a whack at this audience question, this person asked, do you see the DevSecOps process be able to read a system security profile for technical controls, implementation details, automate the assessment, and provide results in a CICD pipeline? So maybe you can answer that one, or if not, it looks like Edna volunteered also.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that, at least a little bit. The tool that we have invested in for interactive application security has built-in policy for rules that can be automatically engaged, and our Office of Information Security sets those policies, even though that my branch manages those or that platform. And so when the project teams use the CICD pipeline, that those rules are in place so that if, let's say that there's a known library that has a dependency library that has a vulnerability in the version that they're using, that it can be banned based on that policy set by Office of Information Security. Rules of things being rejected automatically. So things like critical vulnerabilities or high vulnerabilities are built into the CICD pipeline, so that when a developer does a pull request on their change, that those vulnerabilities are automatically found and presented to the reviewers, and the reviewers can't even approve the pull request to merge into the code base without those vulnerabilities being addressed. That they literally come up and show the vulnerabilities that are there to be remediated, and they can send it back to the developer. So there are certain levels of types of policy and things that can be enforced. And then there's also parts of governance and risk and compliance that can be automated in the CI/CD pipeline. We're still working on that, working with the GRC type of organizations. So we don't have that quite built into our CI/CD pipeline yet. But the idea is to take that the things that are done manually and kind of like record those like a log, right? So you have an audit trail and you have different things that are part of the compliance. And then if that compliance fails, then your build would fail as well.
Great. And Edmund, did you want to tack on to that response?
Yeah, I just wanted to add the following. I'm just going to give an example. There are certain vulnerabilities, or based on the NIST guidelines, right, at 837 and so forth, that says, you have to follow these security controls, your STIGs, your CCIs. And from a practical experience perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we recently deployed a platform as a service solution. And we had, the platform software, we had the CI/CD tool, we had a live scanning for, threats, security threats, for operation environment, and a repository where we post all of our container, or Docker images, containers that become ones that are on runtime. And we had 22,000 security controls that we had to validate, right? And it would be great if we can just use some kind of tool that automatically checks if they are compliant. But it is going to be very challenging, for example, to analyze and automate something like, and I'm reading one of the CCI controls or STIGs, right? The application must provide a capability to limit the number of log-on sessions per user, right? And the description says application management includes the ability to control the number of users and user sessions that utilize the application. So to be honest, as I mentioned earlier, as much as we would like to automate, to David's point is that we try to assess and analyze the right tool that can give us the maximum amount of automation, but there will always going to be a need for manual, right? Depending on the type of level of system and impact level assessment you're dealing with in government. If you got an impact level 2, which is, for non-secret information, then you go to an IL4 or 5 and you go to IL6. Each one of them has a subset of controls that have to be manually checked. I know it's painful. And if you ask a lot of the risk management framework and ACAs like the assessors, hey, why is my review of 150,000 controls for my infrastructure or my environments is taking you 6 months? Well, that kind of couples with the idea of bringing those assessors as part of your team so they can review and assess the system as the system is being built. But to answer the gentleman's, I think Valinder was asking, do you see the DevSecOps process to be able to read system security profile? Profiles are great, but again, at what level can the tools of today assess and validate some of the work that can only be translated or interpreted by humans, right? Until machine language and AI, artificial intelligence becomes more prevalent to assessing and understanding the human thinking. For right now, we will try to leverage, as David said, right, the best tools to implement within our CI/CD capability that can do as much of the automation as possible. Over.
Thank you. And Rusty, I'm going to open it up to you next for any thoughts or feedback around the discussion, but it looks like an audience member does want to know if Checkmarx partners with any companies for DevSecOps. If so, what kind?
Sure. Let me address the follow-up on the other one, then I'll go into the partnership. So it's very true. One of the past walks of life I had was an ISSM, and you're going to have lots of tools out there that can cover automatically checking certain controls. But there is a whole host of controls that no tool out there can do. It's a manual check. It involves research. It involves interviews. It involves actually going and walking the floor and saying, you say there's a fire hydrant around the corner. Is it really there? Let me go spot check it and take a look. That's a very physical example there, but it also applies to a lot of security controls that are very much driven in software. I thought that Edmund's example of the number of times that you can fail a login before it's blocked out. These are all very difficult things for a single tool to check. So you end up having a multitude of tools that are working together that fit certain ones of those tools' criteria. But I think the security workforce has got a very strong future. No automated tool is going to replace someone's job doing that in the future. It's definitely an expertise that's required, and there will always be manual checks just to make sure that what the tools are flagging and identifying is correct, and filling in those gaps where the tools can't automatically make those decisions. To follow up on the question from the chat, Checkmarx works with a multitude of partners, everybody from technical partners such as Invicti here with Ted giving us a SaaS type of partnership, very strong there. We also have other technical partners that do everything from aggregation of results to integration into ticketing systems, integration into CICD pipelines. A lot of the major players that are out there are very good partners of ours, and we work very closely with them and open up and welcome several more partners to join in and work with us at Checkmarx. And then we have another partner network that is fully related to resellers and giving contract vehicles for the ability for our government agencies to be able to purchase with the number of federal vehicles that are out there and work through. So we have a very good partner network. We treat our partners very well and have a strong partner and channel system here at Checkmarx to kind of help with that.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Ted, maybe you can weigh in on this audience question. Traditionally, large Large share of security incidents have stemmed from legacy platforms, COTS products, unsupported versions of the softwares. Any thoughts from you around this?
Absolutely. Great question. The most common thing that we see vulnerabilities associated with are legacy technologies. And we all know, I was talking to a customer the other day, and I used to use the term glacial pace, but I realize glaciers are melting really fast right now. So now I'm going back to snail's pace. And the updates of technologies are happening very slowly, right? And we all know we don't just hop on and go to the latest and greatest version of the technology. You do it over time, but if you could get a snapshot and view of all of the vulnerabilities associated with your current version and the latest and greatest version, it might give you the justification to go up to your executive team and say, let's get to the next version. It'll solve all of these specific vulnerabilities within our environment. So, that's something within our technologies that we're able to provide and give that insight. And then, just in terms of modernizing DevSecOps to capitalize on what some of the other folks said, there's a legacy workforce out there that carries a lot of the expertise around resolving security incidents and security vulnerabilities very quickly. And they can do it in a manual process, but as they retire and trying to convey that knowledge to a junior engineer is obviously a daunting task. So putting tools in their hands that make it easier for them to accomplish the same thing that the senior engineers can do is obviously a great way to boost up your environment as these employees retire. So being able to, again, recognize vulnerabilities that are truly exploitable and get those remediated quickly. And then I had a question earlier about integrating authentication, making sure authentication within your scripted scans runs regularly is a big problem that we hear from our customers. And so being able to incorporate, whether it's your PIV cards, your username and passwords into your scans so they run regularly and make sure you're compliant is obviously key as well. And then just a final point on, additional integration. I heard a few mentions about CICD platforms and adopting those, allowing developers to continue to work in those environments is going to make it easier for them to collaborate with the application security testing team and communicate. Notifications, ease of communication will resolve problems much quicker. And that's really what our customers are coming to us to ask for those fixes. And that's really what we're delivering in our platforms.
Great, thank you. Good answers. Thank you for breaking that down for us. And let's go ahead and pop up our second poll question before we run out of time. And this one is pretty simple. Do you think your organization has taken steps towards implementing DevSecOps? You can answer yes, no, or you're not sure. Before we run out of time, let's answer this last audience question. Addison asks, what are some of the critical issues and pain points you all may be facing at the moment with the DevSecOps arena? We have an automated tool for ingesting and modeling legacy source code for security and IT modernization. So anyone from the panel who wants to answer that, go for it.
This is Edmund. So I'm just going to throw the policy from a government perspective. I don't know how familiar the audience is with a lot of the policies, right? For example, DoD 5075 says a government shall procure and, procure services or tools cuts, like 90% of the time and 10% of the time, do customization in case we cannot do business process re-engineering for some of our legacy processes. And then you got other policies that DoD, pushes out, which is the 87, the latest one that says you need to focus more, on meeting the mission requirements and, doing custom building as well. So there are some policies that go, I wouldn't say against one another, but they kind of conflict. And when we talk about tools to the audience, from the audience question is building a tool that can take your source code and convert it to the modern languages. For example, one of the oldest systems in government is a 1957 contract system. So I don't want to get specific with the names and the technology, but it still runs on COBOL. on mainframes. Like, how do you take that language, that software, and then convert it into a modern language? And then on top of that, how do you run static analysis against auto-generated code that may not even align with a lot of the, best practices from Fortran or Cobalt code? So, from a government perspective, you need to start thinking of it in cost schedule performance. All right, so if I take the as-is code and I buy this tool that does the conversion, who can translate the auto-generated code, and what kind of resources do I need to now go and redesign or rewrite some of that code so it can be actually fully understood by a lot of the tools that do static analysis, dynamic analysis, like SAS, DAST, pen testing, blue, red, canary deployments and things of that nature. So it's great that the industry comes up with these innovative ways to do, auto generation or do checking of code as is. But there are times that we have to be careful that, tools are great, but if the people behind those tools are not trained with the tools and they're not familiar on how that process works, it becomes, more complicated than, holistically looking at at the requirement that you need the people, you need the tools, and then you need the processes, train them all together, align the process with the team and build that team that's culturally fit, to truly get that DevSecOps mindset and start leveraging some of the tools that the industry has to offer over.
Thank you so much, Edmund. And then we also have one more come through, so maybe we can sneak this one in before the end of the panel discussion. We've already automated security scans within the pipeline, but our release gets delayed due to RFC process, and then new vulnerabilities get introduced and then they delay the release. Have any of our panelists experienced this before? Any thoughts? Okay, Ted, you got it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely speak to what our customers are experiencing. For those who have used SAS, DAST, IS tools, that typical scans to websites take a long time. They can take hours, right? So when you end up making changes or you find a vulnerability and you go back and you correct that, you need, someone mentioned earlier about auto checking, right? You need to auto check once you remediate a problem. So when you go back to auto check, you don't want to have to complete another 3-hour, 4-hour scan. So that's where incremental scanning really becomes important, where it doesn't have to redo the entire scan over again. It just goes back and looks at the specific changes that you addressed. And that could take 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So it definitely shortens the cycle of getting your applications out the door without having to repeat the entire process.
Thank you so much. So we're just about out of time, and I want to open it up for our panelists to, what do you want to leave our audience with? Any words of advice, wisdom, affirmation? We'll go in the order that we started with. So Edmund, closing statement.
Yes, thank you for that. I just wanted to emphasize that the partnership and the integration between the industry and the government has to be more engaging. And I don't mean that me as a government and you as an industry or a industry partner, but we need to start sharing a lot of our lessons learned from an industry perspective as well as from the government perspective. We need to start building those relationships that when the industry builds and provides us a set of tools to help us deliver on our capabilities, that those tools are built with requirements in mind. If the industry is targeting the government, then those tools need to be a little more, with that design mindset of that security, shift left security. Make sure that the tools are FIPS compliant. When you design and develop your tools, make sure they're designed and developed for low bandwidth environments. They are designed and developed for, disconnected environments, so that we don't have to fight that battle when we procure these tools just to find out that we can no longer deploy them in these environments. Over.
Thank you, Edmund, and then over to you, Ian.
Yes, Edmund said it, correctly. It's one of the biggest things that we needed to do, both industry and government going forward, is to get that collaboration. Just like you said, industry shared their lessons learned as they're moving forward with their journeys, and then us to share back out. Even if it is just on the tools that industry is bringing to us, the lessons learned, the issues that we're facing. But on top of that, there are some things within the government that we can't share out, beyond that government perspective. So, to enable your developers to, have their own area for learn, so that they're not sitting around, waiting on IT to get back to them, or they don't know where to go to get their answers. Bring the knowledge to the developers. Whether they're the junior developers just coming in, or those older developers, that you want to get into this new mindset to change that culture.
Thank you, Ian. And over to you, David.
Yeah, adding to that, with the changing of the culture, that doing shifting things left and security, if you take some of the automation tools even out of it, that there's a whole focus that is, I think, being missed especially in the government and at census, right? That of looking at the culture changes needed for doing not only DevOps but DevSecOps and the security aspects of things. Earlier with one of the questions, they talked about security at the end of the cycle and having to go back and fix things. That if you change the process of the culture so that it's all automated, not automated, but all the culture is such that it's done all the time. It's always on. Its security is always happening. It's not a one-time event. That it can prevent some of those types of incidents or things from happening.
Thank you, David. And over to you, Rusty.
So we at Checkmarks are very much in tune with what you're saying about industry and government collaboration, and we're very open to that and encourage you to work with us. We want you to see us as more than just a vendor. We actually are here to help you, not just sell you a product, but we want you to actually take that product and solve your problem. And a lot of times these problems are things that we've either got experience from consulting backgrounds, or we've got a wealth of actual industry researchers that are out there finding new exploits, looking for ways, publishing exploits. And we try to put as much of that logic in our tools as we can, but we have a whole team of services organizations and professionals in our industry that are leading the pack, and especially as we move into new realms. Infrastructure as code is a new hot topic. API security is a big hot topic. As is, technologies modernize and we embrace all of these new technologies, we want to kind of be in that journey with you and help you to solve these problems as you go. So look at us as not just a vendor, but a partner as well.
Thank you, Rusty. And Ted, you get to wrap us up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closing comments really focus on, what as a vendor do we need to deliver and support our federal customers with, and that is compliance, right? We haven't really mentioned it too much, but the main compliance measures that are going to be addressed in the DevSecOps environment are really the 853. If you look at SA 11, that really outlines the guidelines for SAST, DAST, IST, and some other areas out there that need to be addressed. And taking a modern approach to that. Obviously, DisSSTIG is nothing new, but it certainly helps within your DevSecOps process with that compliance measure. And then the latest and greatest under, Biden's executive order, they just released OMB Memoranda M2130, which speaks specifically in a very short time frame, giving you 60 days to identify your on-premise applications, and then going out and making sure they're vulnerability free, amongst other things, over the course of the next year, is obviously a big requirement that just came out on August 10th. So we're here to help you with that as well. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. Rusty and I, we work and collaborate together to help you support the entire DevSecOps cycle. And we look forward to having that conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. Before I forget, let's pop up our third and final poll question to wrap it up. With the fiscal year coming to an end and OMB's latest deadlines to secure critical software, are you planning on purchasing a web application security testing solution in this fiscal year or not? So please go ahead and answer that. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have today, but I want to thank our amazing panelists and thank you all at home for joining and asking such awesome questions. And we hope to see you again at our next one on August 31st from 10 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And this time it'll be for ATARC's Advancing DevSecOps throughout the U.S. Department of Defense Virtual Summit. So you can go register on our page for that one now, and looking forward to having you all back on another panel discussion, hopefully sometime in the near future. So thank you and have a great rest of your week.